First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming today, and I want to thank these awesome panel of people that are here to help us learn a little bit about long-term care, how to get prepared for things. We've done this last year, and I think it went very well, but I felt like people that came didn't get to really talk about what they actually do. So what we did this year is we formed some scenarios, and we're going to read the scenario and kind of talk the way each person can kind of help. They've each had time to kind of look at them and see what they can do to assist with the people that we're going to be discussing. So I want to just go down my panel right now. First, I want to say that I'm Susan McCarthy. I'm the director at the Pepperell Senior Center. I've been there for about 3 years. That's with the director. I love what I do, and we just want to get people prepared for life in general. A lot of things pop up in our younger years as well. That's why long-term planning can be very, very helpful. And that's why we wanted to get these great people together to help us do that. So I want to go just right down the line. We have Kathy Crowley, Riverport Director of Community Outreach. We have Jim DiGiorgio from Senior Helpers. We have Mark Vazzapoli. He's a financial planner and advisor. We have Jackie Holliday, VA Community Outreach Specialist. We have Tammy LeCompte. Did I do that right, Tammy?
Yeah.
Awesome. So this is great for Tammy because she was a little nervous today. I just want to say that right now. She is prepared and ready to go. Woohoo! So Tammy is here from Cooperative Elder Services in Groton. And we have Shannon Pinkham. She's an sober nursing and hospice. And way there at the very, very end is this precious woman who is our volunteer outreach coordinator on Thursdays, Marianne Mortensen. She is a 30-year experienced director and social worker. So we want to just say thank you to all of you for coming. And let's start with our first scenario. And the first scenario, Shannon's going to read that for us.
Mr. Jones is an 84-year-old man who has suffered from poorly managed high blood pressure for many years. He recently had a serious stroke. He was rushed to the hospital on a Tuesday afternoon and was admitted in the early evening. The stroke compromised his swallowing and a feeding tube was placed. After several days, Mrs. Jones was told he would be discharged soon and he would need to go to a nursing home for rehabilitation, and there was a possibility that he would need long-term custodial care. The hospital discharge planner gave Mrs. Jones a list of nursing facilities near her home that the beds were available. Mrs. Jones wants to know how she'll ever pay for all of his care, what her options are.
So how do we start with this? Marianne is going to...
Well, Mr. Jones definitely, with the situation, is going to be in the hospital at least 3 overnights before he's discharged. And that qualifies him for Medicare payment for the nursing home. And usually the first 20 days it's full amount, and then after that it's 80% up to 100 days, and it's usually based on whether or not a person is making progress. And if they stop making progress, then they can be discharged off of Medicare. However, Mr. Jones has a feeding tube, and it's going to be a while if they can ever wean him off of that. And that's one of the qualifiers for Medicare to pay completely for the first 100 days. And then after that, depending on what the family situation is, I might refer them to an elder law attorney, or if the wife wants to take him home with round-the-clock care, that might fall into the hands of some of the other folks. But if she thinks that he's going to stay in the hospital at the 100-day mark, if their income is low enough and they don't have a lot of liquid assets or second homes and things like that, I would suggest that they put in an application for Medicaid for long-term care.
So let's say Mrs. Pinkham, is that correct?
That's me.
Oh, sorry. Let's say Mrs. Jones decides that she really wants to bring her husband home with her. Where would she go from there?
she would get a referral for, more than likely, from the rehab for home care. And home care would cover, home care, there's a lot of elements to home care. So home care would cover skilled nursing, physical therapist, sometimes a social worker, occupational therapy, home health aides, but limited under Medicare. And oftentimes, hand in hand go some type of a private home care agency, somebody that can give either round-the-clock care or just more care for somebody that might not be able to. So Mrs. Jones might not be able to care for her husband on her own, but the private care, along with the home health care, would help them to stay home, to age in place. In order to qualify for home care, you do need a skilled reason, very similar to being in a facility. So you would have to have something that's treatable, whether it be a wound, education for family, and nurses are there for approximately an hour to 2 hours, maybe 2 to 3 times a week. Sometimes there are some myths that, you go home and you have these nurses and they're just there and they just are always, but Medicare doesn't pay for that. So there's a lot of education that goes along with the nursing to teach the family how to do a feeding tube, how to keep the patient at home, how to transport, and transfer whether they're able to get up on their own or not. And then again, there's private care that would come in, usually for like a PCA, a homemaker, things of that nature.
So usually when I get these calls, the person's panicking and they're calling me from the hospital, right?
Yep.
And we're like, and how can we help you? The first thing I think I try to say is, have you talked to the social worker at the hospital? Have you done that first? Because there's always somebody that's coming in, but people don't realize how helpful they can be, right? And so I think when someone gets into a situation like this, it's usually panic time, right? So they come to the senior center, they ask me, and I may have not seen them for the first time, and as well as you guys, right? So I think what we want to do is, so where would we go? So we're going to go home, but there's only going to be someone there twice or 3 times a week for an hour or 2, right? What does this person do then? Yeah.
I think to piggyback on Mary Beth, now most people that go from the hospital generally will have a short rehab stay. At a skilled setting where they're getting some occupational therapy, physical therapy, and it kind of takes that situation down a notch a little bit. It gives you a little time to do your research, to make your phone calls. What's reasonable? Should she take him home? Maybe now's the time that the doctor's saying he shouldn't go home. It's not the wife saying he can't take care of him. So a lot of times, because it's covered under Medicare so often, why not? It gets the person stronger. It kind of takes that situation down a little bit. Gives everybody a little time to breathe and maybe put a different discharge of not only 3 days to put this all together, but maybe 20 days and see if that person progresses where they could potentially go home. So I think it's smart to take advantage of those rehab days a lot of times with that 3-night stay, just because it buys the family some time. It buys Mrs. Jones some time to figure out what's a good plan also. And you're not pulling the bill general for those first 20 days.
The other thing about in the nursing home, or even if it's not a rehab center or they don't have a special rehab unit, most of them do these days, the Medicare will pay, like I said before, 20 days full. But after that 100 days, and this man has a feeding tube, so the family can relax for 100 days and explore other possibilities. I'm trying to think of some of the other exceptions that gets 100 days. New and brittle diabetics that need a lot of teaching to be able to do their insulin and about their diet and everything. And I believe if people are new to kidney disease, dialysis, so that would buy them 100 days. After that, because this scenario says she doesn't know how she's going to pay for all of this, that's why I brought up Medicaid. I'm not sure if Medicaid will pay for visiting nurse and home care,
Yes.
or other services, but, they'll pay some for that.
Jim, would you like to chime in?
Well, just to kind of tailgate on what Shannon and Marianne have talked about, those of us that have kids talk about it takes a village to raise kids. It takes a village really to care for the elderly, to care for your parents. We have lots of situations, by the way, my company does in-home care. We have lots of situations where there's adult children, where there's siblings, where there's spouses that are helping out and caring for mom and dad. There may be neighbors, there may be services that are being provided by elder services or by a skilled VNA, where the PT, nursing, and some level of homemakers coming in. And then there's also private pay, or they may also be taking advantage of adult day help. So it's not unusual to have many different pieces kind of in the puzzle to make it all come together. Kind of the segue to the cost, because that was really what Mrs. Jones was concerned about. One of the conversations that she needs to have with a financial planner or with an attorney is does she own her house? Is a reverse mortgage a possibility to keep her in her home? So maybe she can have, if that house is paid for, maybe she can do a reverse mortgage and have that help with the funding. Obviously, we want to know if Mr. Jones is a veteran. He's 84 years old. He could be a Korean War veteran. There is a veteran's benefit. It can help pay for adult day health. It can help pay for assisted living, or it can pay for home care. So that's always an option that you want to explore. It's called the aid attendant pension benefit. There's other options out there. If Mr. Jones has a whole life insurance policy, that can be converted into an annuity. And that annuity is called an irrevocable benefit account. Can actually pay Mr. Jones every month to pay for services. It can provide a payment for him, kind of like a long-term care insurance policy. So those are the kind of conversations that Mrs. Jones needs to be having with a financial professional or an attorney.
The benefits that an adult day health can provide for Mr. Jones, being discharged home and collaborating with a service where nurses come in, an hour or two, say on a Tuesday and Thursday. If he came to us those other 3 days a week, he would have 6 hours a day of nurse coverage to check on the feeding tube, to check on all of the other health needs that come along with it, as well as service coordination for outside services, to help with funding, to help with scholarships that might be available to him, to work with the VA to see if there are any funding options if he were a veteran. The service coordination department would reach out to all of those funding options once their own financial services were exhausted.
Assuming that Mr. Jones is a veteran, we have to make sure he's eligible for care. You mentioned aid attendance. Aid and attendance is based on household income, so he may or may not be eligible at this point, but we don't want him to exhaust all of their income before we're able to help. So, because I'm assuming that he is an eligible veteran, there's a short stay service that's provided at the VA, which is kind of like a rehab. So maybe after he's exhausted his time in the outside rehab, the VA also offers a short stay rehab. It's kind of an occupational, get them back into their independent state. You mentioned the feeding tube, so I don't know how that's going to progress. But if that's not an option, the VA also offers home health aides, so that could be an option. And considering the fact that he has had a stroke and he may be somewhat limited as far as mobility is concerned, telehealth may be an option to make sure that his vitals and everything, that he's progressing well, rather than having to leave the home for doctor's appointments. He may be able to be seen by a provider via telehealth. The VA would provide equipment in his home so that he can be, his vitals or any other things that need to be monitored on a regular basis can be monitored remotely, and so that he wouldn't have to be moved in and out of doctor's appointments. So
Yep.
those are some options.
The telehealth, is that what you keep saying?
Yes.
I don't know what that is.
Okay.
So if I don't know what it is, I'm sure there are other people, you guys are all shaking your heads because you know what it is. So I would love to know what that is.
So telehealth is a part of technology that the VA is using for access, and it's basically we set up equipment in a veteran's home. Sometimes it's just a telephone, sometimes it's a telephone with a monitor. But a veteran can be seen in his home by a provider that's in a remote location that's at the Bedford VA, and the veteran lives here in town, and they can communicate that way. So it's one of the new technologies that's been deployed by the VA to help with our access.
One thing I want to, and I don't know if I'm jumping, I know we have to move on, but to other scenarios, but Jackie, if there's a veteran and they have never gone to the VA hospital for any services at all, are they in the system? Are they hooked up with everything and everything's going to be cool? They're good to
It
go?
is not automatic.
Okay.
It is not automatic. That caseworker at the hospital that's doing the discharge hopefully will ask if they're a veteran, and actually they do ask that sometimes now. And if they are, reach out to the hospital, to one of the VA facilities, the one that's most convenient to the veteran and their families, to see what type of services can be provided, because I have to know not every VA facility provides the same care.
So it kind of is important for a veteran, even if they have other doctors somewhere else, to be hooked up with the VA and
Yes.
go for maybe a physical every year and just see how things are, so they're in that system.
I
correct?
agree. It's better to be in the system and not need it than to need it.
Yep.
And it'd be a last minute kind of thing.
It's really important. So
Yes.
I just wanted to make that point. Let's move on.
Let
Go
me
ahead.
make
Yeah.
a comment on the financial planning side.
Sure.
Because I always like to look at things before they happen. I mean, if we have scenarios here and we're currently in these scenarios,
Yep.
then we're limited on our resources, on what we can do. We need to get everybody here involved, whether it's, my father is a Korean War veteran, he goes to the VA, so he has those benefits. But as a planner, most important thing is to think of this when you're younger.
Yep.
I mean, and that's unfortunately what not a lot of people are doing right now today. In a lot of the clients that I sit down with, in a lot of situations, the hardest thing is to get the parents to disclose to their children their financial position and to understand how things will move. And then there are things, as Jim mentioned earlier, there are things like insurance policies, annuities, other things that are in place, long-term care. And then there's just strictly just looking at it, at budgeting. Because when it all comes down to, if you're exhausting all your care and all your resources and you can't qualify for Medicaid, and who's going to take care of you? Can you afford the in-home care person? There's going to be some out-of-pocket costs
Yep.
that's going to happen, and then your decision is going to become not a health decision, it becomes a financial decision. Well, I can't afford that. And then I look at it because there's three of us and both our parents are alive in their 80s, and saying, okay, which one of the three of us are going to jump into this situation and take care of mom and dad if we can't afford to bring in health, or we've exhausted our health, or there's no place to go. One benefit, as I mentioned earlier, my father is a VA, and there's tremendous benefits with the VA in that aspect. But financial planning, there's so many things and so many options that you have to look at, and doing that budgeting earlier in your life makes sense. I mean, that's really where it comes down to on the financial side. Long-term care insurance is probably most least sold product out there in the industry. That not only does it cover, I mean, when me and my wife, we purchased our long-term care policy when we were in our mid-30s. That is almost unheard of. I mean, to get someone that's 35, 36 to buy a long-term care policy and spend a few $100s a month is probably the last thing. I can't even twist some of my clients' arms to put that much money. Matter of fact, when I purchased my plan 25 years ago or so, someone twisted my arm to buy it, and fortunately, in our situation, we had long-term care insurance when, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, I can't even recall, my wife went in for, at 40, let me tell you her age, 48 years old,
See you later.
she went in for a back fusion surgery, and because of long-term care insurance, let me make this known, this is what's so important and how vital something like that, because of long-term care policy, she went from the hospital, because we're not VAs or anything like that, we had Blue Cross Blue Shield, in the hospital, they did the surgery, 2 days, 3 days later, the nurse comes in and says, well, can you walk? Why are they asking that? Because the health insurance company wants you out of that hospital. They want that bed cleared. Let me see, let's see if she walks, get out of bed, falls on the floor. By the 4th day, it's like, can you walk? You're gonna have to, now by the I don't know what the number of days it was like, well, you either have to leave or go to rehab. Someone mentioned rehab. Because your health insurance is not going to cover anymore in this hospital bed. Fortunately, because long-term care, we went directly from the hospital to the house. And when we arrived in the house, there was a nurse that came in and evaluated our entire home for free, and actually figured out what we needed to change in our property, as far as whether it's a bed, We went out and bought an adjustable bed, was covered under long-term care insurance. The person at Jordan's Furniture thought I was crazy, that insurance was gonna pay for a bed. She says, this never happened in my 30-year career. The long-term care paid for it, not health insurance. And from that point, we got care over the next 6 months, literally, and not an expense came out of our pocket. And so things like that can be our planning things. Now, when someone's in the middle of it and they've already had conditions and health conditions, obviously they would never qualify for long-term care. And then when you get older, most people, it doesn't even fit into their budget. So on the financial aspect of it, planning is so vital because that's important. So
Thanks, Mark. It sounds like a sad situation, a sad point to be talking about. But no one knows what's going to happen the next day, right? And I have somebody that I know, her son was 28 years old and had an aneurysm. And the parents, he had nothing prepared, nothing ready to go. Parents had no control over anything. He had school tuitions to pay and everything else, and no one would let him pay them. So, and though we don't like to think about it, it's really important to think about it early and then be prepared, because if Mr. Jones and Mrs. Jones did their financial planning or was able in the younger youth of their life, to save up that money and get prepared for these things, that we know something's going to happen in our lives that we're not prepared for, right?
I just wanted to make a quick comment, and I agree 100% with the pre-planning and everything. But often, in my experience, when I worked in the hospital and I worked in nursing home as a case manager and so on, a lot of times when people came to me, it was people who, were living from paycheck to paycheck their whole life and didn't really have the money to plan ahead. Or sometimes it's someone that has no family and they're getting along, God only knows how they've been managing. And, so there are a lot of different scenarios. And of course, if you have the means to see a financial planner like this gentleman and let him help you, get everything ready to go, I would refer people to a financial planner in a minute. But unfortunately, there are people that just aren't in a position to plan too much for the future.
Right, this is a big world we live in. Everyone's on a different financial level. So that's why it's great to talk about all the things that we can offer and what stage we should start and how we should move forward. So what I want to do now is just go to the next scenario, and Jim, you're going to read this for us?
Sure. So Mrs. Brown was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 3 years ago. She's a widow, but her son and daughter live close by. She has a very nice 3-bedroom house here in Pepperell where she's been living alone, and she has $100,000 in savings. It's become clear to her that she can't live alone anymore. She has left food in the stove a few times that burned and set out the smoke detectors. She has fallen 4 times and luckily hasn't been seriously hurt, and she's not taking care of her hygiene. What are their options?
You want to start with that, Jim?
Oh, sure. Well, so she was diagnosed 3 years ago. What we know is statistically, someone that's diagnosed with Alzheimer's can live 7, 8, 9 years. It's unusual for somebody to last longer than that, so certainly she needs to be thinking about, the family needs to be thinking about what's going to happen in the next 5 to 7 years. Probably is the window that they need to be looking at. Kind of the good news is that she owns a house and that she does have some savings, so she has some options that are available. One of the first things that I'd want to look at is the house safe? Is the house an appropriate environment for her to age in place? The fact that she's fallen 4 times suggests to me that maybe some furniture needs to be rearranged, maybe there's some carpets that aren't properly placed, maybe there's a hoarding situation where there's kind of an accumulation of things in the home that need to be looked at. She might be someone that would be an ideal candidate to stay in her home with some care, and it could be care during the day, if she's okay in the evening, if she's not a wander risk, or she may be somebody that needs 24-hour care or live-in care. A lot of times in this situation, someone can go to an adult day program and spend 6 hours a day at the adult day program, and then have a caregiver, either a family member or a professional caregiver from an agency in the home to help her in the evening. So the good news is it doesn't sound like she needs skilled care at this point, So with some supervision with either with a caregiver in the home or at an adult day program or in assisted living with a memory unit, she might do very, very well. But certainly she needs some accommodations made. She can't just be left alone in her home. I mentioned she has $100,000 in saving. Just to kind of put things in perspective, if she had a live-in caregiver, the cost for that is roughly $100,000 a year. So she has 1 year of live-in care covered. But as I said earlier, she's only her 3rd year into the disease, so she really needs to think about years 5 and beyond.
So I'm going to jump to another, thank you, Jim. So let's say she has Alzheimer's, early stages, 3 years, right? She's living at home by herself. But are her kid, what are our concerns? She owns her home, right? So what's going to happen to her if somebody isn't on the house with her? Or
I think that's more of a question towards an attorney, but also when in the financial aspect of it, accounts, whether it be a checking account, an investment account, whatever accounts, or even your car, how is it registered? Is it registered in your name? Is it registered jointly? Is it registered in a trust? And those are things that more. So as a financial planner, you look at how are things registered. Some people say, oh, I got a trust. I said, well, show me your tax bill. Look at the tax bill, their name's on it. Like, well, your house is not in the trust. Your name's on the tax bill. So how things are registered and appropriately to the attorney is elder law attorney. Refer that to.
she's on
Yes,
here.
oh,
Oh, she's not here.
So very sorry.
I was wondering why I was supposed to jump to Swenson. So going to the attorney, so as a financial planner, if you have an attorney, we work with that attorney. If you don't, you need to sit with the attorney because then there is things like, and I know enough to be dangerous, but I am not an attorney, is power of attorney, legal healthcare power of attorney, things like that where you can actually, some with Alzheimer's, may be a point where they can't make financial decisions and medical decisions. So that's the thing.
No, that's why I was bringing it up.
Yeah.
We have to catch it before it gets too late down the road here.
So kind of
That's
piggybacking
why I
on.
was, and I didn't mean to.
Make,
Yeah, I was wondering where their attorney was.
No.
I'm over speaking on the attorney sitting here somewhere. And,
You're not, you're doing great.
But that's vitally important on how
Right.
accounts are established jointly. There's even accounts that you have where it's called TOD, transfer upon death, which someone's checking. If it's just one person, that it's just an account there. So those things are important. My brother passed away 2 years ago, and I'm his executor. And there were things that were just registered in his name. It could be simply a car. How do you get that off of registration to take over ownership? So things like that are attorney.
Yeah, very important to see an elder law attorney if you're
Absolutely.
elderly. And the elder law attorneys study the elder laws. And it's
Yeah.
very important to go to somebody that is an elder law attorney that can help you with these situations. Shannon,
well, you were discussing power of attorney and things of that nature, and it just piggybacked on to financial planning early. Everything should be planned early. So yes, these scenarios are the severe, oh no, what are we going to do now? But you guys might be in situations where you can take the advice and try to make some changes and try to have conversations. Advanced planning, advanced directives, power of attorney, you want to make those choices early. Like, some 20-year-old that has an aneurysm, that happens. It's awful, but it happens. I have a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old. We have conversations, we make them silly so that they can tolerate them, such as, don't you dare put me in a casket with shoes on, because I don't want to be buried with shoes on. But then they become serious, and I touch upon what I want, because you can name anybody power of attorney, but if you don't touch upon what you want, or your family doesn't touch upon what they want, then nobody's ever going to know. And so they're going to be stuck with a really big responsibility on their shoulders, and that's almost not fair. It's not almost not fair. It is not fair,
Right.
because they won't know what decisions to make. You might not know what decisions to make for your parents if you don't have the conversations. And I will say that oftentimes I've had conversations, and I've done forums, and I've done education with elders, and a lot of times it's the kids that won't have the conversation with the parents. So I had a 94-year-old woman come up to me and say, I'm going to die. I know I'm going to die. Don't ask my kids. My kids, they won't.
No one
You've
wants to talk about
got
it.
to have the conversations. As hard as they are, You've got to have the conversations, and you can make them light. Like I said, my 15 and my 19-year-old, they know silly things. They know I've been able to make it light enough, but so that they know what I do really want if something were to happen, unfortunately.
So Shannon, just because we were talking about that, and I'll get right back to you, what are we doing next week, next Tuesday?
We
At
are
the
going-
senior center.
Yes, but at the senior center, we're going to have a conversation about advanced directives, 5 wishes, and honoring choices. So-
So it's open to anyone. I said 18 plus, but really anybody. And it's really important to make those choices now
Yeah.
so that they're yours, and to also talk to your family, have a dinner, have a conversation. I didn't think I was gonna lose, I mean, thank God I didn't lose my mother, but I never thought I would lose my mother. And every time they talked about stuff, I was like, I'm good, I don't care, blah, 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 you know? But it came to that point where, oh my gosh, I might, I could lose my mother, and it's scary. But and what's more scary, think about it, is if you lose that person that you love, you want to do every single thing for them that they want, every single thing. What they want to do, how they want to be buried, what do they want to have a service, do they this, do they that? You don't think those are big things for the people that are left here, but they're enormous. So it's really important. If you want to come down next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, the 20th, we'd love to. It's the 20th.
At 4:30.
6 o'clock.
Okay.
It's at 6.
Sorry.
We'll see you at 6. Hopefully Shannon will be there. All right. How are we with this scenario? Yes.
So, Mrs. Brown,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
being only 3 years into her diagnosis, Adult Day Health Program would probably be her best route at this time. It would keep her in her home longer.
Yep.
5 days a week, a nurse oversight daily, socialization, therapeutic activities, would keep her mind and body going, exercise daily. The social services, the nursing, we would communicate with her family members, whoever her, maybe not her family members, her caregivers, whoever that is, and we would keep them informed of where she is in her progress, and have her $100,000 in savings last as long as it can, while helping her find other means of resources to help pay for it, providing transportation to and from the program, a daily meal so she's not putting her stove on and forgetting about it, a hot lunch. And then as it progresses, family members might have to make alternative decisions.
And the biggest thing is that social interaction when she has Alzheimer's.
Social
Not just
interaction.
one person to talk to, but several different
Right.
people to talk to, to keep the mind stimulated and active and moving and energized. Kathy, I skipped over you twice.
The thing that sticks out to me, and it has nothing to do with working in assisted living or any of this, is I think all of us, the first thing I want to do is talk to the kids about the disease process. Like, and educate yourself and know what's probably coming down the road. As a caregiver, many years ago, we had no idea. We got this senile diagnosis 25 years ago from my grandmother. We had no idea what's coming down the road. And I think that's a gift that we all give to people, is learn this disease process. And we just had a lady that said, well, I hope it's not going to get any worse. Well, it gets worse. It gets more complicated.
Yes.
And you've got a lot of resources. But really finding out about the disease process, I had no idea about incontinence, I didn't know about mobility, that sort of stuff. So I think it's really helps you prepare for what might happen, or probably going to happen down the road. Everybody's journey is very different. But my first thing is, get to the Alzheimer's Association, get to know this disease process, get to know the safety issues at home, reach out and educate yourself. So
I want to take this minute to introduce Nancy Catalini Chu for coming tonight. She is an elder law attorney. I think we spoke elder law attorney. She heard it and her car just got here in 2 seconds. So we're pumped. Thank you so much for coming tonight. So we're just going through our scenarios. How are we with our second scenario? Good? Moving on? Okay. Jackie, you were going to read the next one.
Yes. Jill Smith is a 31-year-old soldier. He lost both legs below the knee in Afghanistan. He also suffers from PTSD. He's married with 1 child and has a very supportive mother, father, and sister. He has been in a VA hospital for acute care and rehabilitation. He is now being discharged home. What are his options? Okay, so seeing how he's been in a VA hospital, he should have a case manager who has a clear-cut discharge plan. which would include care in the home, putting him in contact with the appropriate folks at his house if he needed adaptive things done in his home, adaptive equipment for everyday life. He's going to have, it mentioned that he also has PTSD, so hopefully he's been receiving some care for post-traumatic stress disorder, so that he'll have some mental health issues as with a mental health treatment as well as physical health treatment. So when he leaves the hospital, he should be discharged with a plan with occupational health, physical therapy, and all the things that are going to help him live his best life. Also, they mentioned that he has a supportive family. The case manager should also connect his family with caregiver support. It's a support group for people who are providing care for veterans, so that they can learn things that they need to know to make the house more of a home for everybody involved, for themselves as well as the veteran. Respite care is a service that's provided for the VA for the caregivers. If caregiving can be exhausting, so they do provide a program that will allow either a person to come into the home so that the primary caregivers can leave, or a place for the veteran to come to so that the primary caregivers can have some respite care. If the veteran has not already, and I would hope that they're well on the way to filing a claim for service connection, because they are an amputee, they would need to do that. That would pay compensate them monetarily for their service connection for having lost both limbs. And peer support. Peer support is another program that's fairly new in the VA. Veterans who have experienced PTSD or some other type of disorder are paired with veterans who are going through these things, and it's a camaraderie kind of thing. Veterans tend to trust veterans, and so they pair them with someone who they can relate to, and it could be something as simple as meeting them weekly for coffee or a phone call every Sunday afternoon, but pair them with someone that can kind of help them through the journey. And that's just a few of the things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to chime in? Let's move on to our next one. So Mark was going to do this one. Mark Vespold.
Margaret Green is a 54-year-old woman who was walking her dog one evening when a drunk driver jumped the curb, hitting her and her dog. Her dog died. She suffered many injuries. She had a very bad concussion, which was left with a mild cognitive deficiency. Her left leg was broken in 2 places. Her right ankle was crushed, and several ribs were cracked. She had surgery on her leg and ankle and was in acute care hospital for almost 3 weeks. Then she was transferred to a rehab hospital, Lake Spalding. She has 1 child, a son, who's single, lives in California, and she has been told she is being discharged next week. She walks with a cane and is not able to climb the flight of stairs to her apartment. What are her options? Did you make these up?
No, Mary Ann did.
And it's
Incredible.
She's awesome. She's awesome.
And it's based on a real case.
Wow.
So where do we start, people?
Well, if Ms. Green is a veteran, we need to get her connected with her VA resources, because this is going to be expensive. And this is where, even though these injuries aren't a result of her service, if she is eligible for VA health care, the VA can provide some of her rehabilitative services at a lower rate than she'd have to pay on the outside.
So she lives in an apartment. Would a social worker talk to her about that? I'm asking would the social worker talk to her and say, hey, you're going to go home now?
At the hospital?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to go home now. How are you going to get there?
Generally at a rehab, they'll ask how many steps to get into your apartment, how many steps to get up to your bedroom, and they work on that, and they generally will not discharge you until you can get up into your apartment and get, at least even with assistance, but until you're able to accomplish that. A lot of times when I go in for discharge planning, so-and-so has 5 steps to get to their front door. We're working on it still, so we're keeping them for another couple of days until they can complete this task. Provided she has the cane, she's not able to climb the flight of stairs on her own, she might be discharged because she's got a family member that's able to help her to get into the home. She should be discharged with some type of home care services. So she would very well qualify for Medicare home care. So she would qualify for, it's looking like a skilled nurse. It looks like she would qualify for PT, OT to make sure her home has the adaptive equipment in it that she needs, and possibly a home health aide. And she would have that care for it can range depending on her progress. We can bring in private care as well. I'm not sure how the private care is paid. I don't know if Medicaid or Medicare covers some of those costs for PCAs. I know that there are programs that do, but
The only service provider, but
Yeah.
before I'm not sure she'll qualify, but it'd be private pay.
so she might be able to have assistance with that in the home. With cognitive deficits, depending on how severe they are, she may qualify for Medicaid waivers, again, because of the cognitive disability. And hopefully that is taken care of in the hospital before she's discharged or in the rehab before she's discharged.
So this is another great thing for the, being prepared for anything, correct, Mark? Starting all these things earlier, saving up the money, putting a little money aside for these things that we're not prepared for. Nancy, would you like to say a few words on this?
Well, what occurs to me as I'm looking through your scenarios is that, most of us, with the exception of Mark and I, on the panel, look at it from the medical side.
Yep.
So when you analyze any situation, you have to do the medical analysis, but you also do kind of the financial and legal analysis, because sometimes you have clients who qualify for a program medically but not financially, or they qualify financially but not medically. So it's important to know that both pieces have to, both criteria have to be met for you to really effectively help a client. And I think in any of these situations, what I would look at, obviously I defer to the medical, to the people in those specific areas, but on the financial and legal side of it, what it should drive home is, as you were just intimating, everyone should be prepared with their incapacity documents. Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, HIPAA release, those kind of documents, because incapacity can happen at any age. And although we don't think we need anything until we're quote unquote elderly, anyone over the age of 18 should have them. If you have kids in college, you actually can't find out their medical information because they are now emancipated. So it's not just an age-related condition. Everyone should have their incapacity documents in effect to address that, because then if anything here happens, you're looking at Margaret here, who's got waning mental capacity. Now we have a concern, is she even capable of signing a document? And does that drive us into court, when it would have been an obvious thing to have her son perhaps handle those had she been competent and able to sign those in advance. So it should make people aware. I have to have my legal documents in effect, because I don't know when I'm going to have something happen to me. And then financially, each program that we're talking about has different criteria. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Our number 2 was about a woman that had Alzheimer's, right? And she owns a home, 3-bedroom home. And I was saying, I said, what are the kids supposed to be doing now, right?
Right.
Before things get mentally worse.
Right.
So what are some of those things? I know you kind of touched on those, but we need to do something with the house. We need to make, Mark brought up some great points earlier, but we were like, he was looking for you. So, if you can just touch on a few of those things for me, that would be awesome.
I think the
For
most
us.
important thing any aging person should have is the power of attorney, because if you die without doing a will, your money may not go where you wanted it to go, but it will go somewhere, because the state has a plan for that. But they don't have a plan for what happens to you if you don't take care of your incapacity documents. So if you don't have a power of attorney and something happens to you, things freeze. But there is no default. I don't care if you're married. I don't care if you have one holier-than-thou child who is salt of the earth. It doesn't matter. You have to have said in advance, I'm okay with that person taking care of my finances. And if you don't have that magic piece of paper, we have to go to court, and that can take months. And you have to pay for your care during that time. You can't apply to any programs. There's no one to sign off. So that, to me, is probably the most important document. And again, people, I think, are lulled into this idea that, but I have a spouse. Yeah, but if you die, your spouse owns those assets. If you're incapacitated, they own half those assets and the inability to deal with the other half. So that does not help them, if you think of it that way. There is some flexibility with the healthcare proxy if you don't have one in terms of next to kin, but you're still better served if you have multiple children with having selected one, because if there's a fight, again, things freeze, right? Marianne's already laughing over here. Not that it's funny, but that she's seen it. So you are always well served by having your wishes commemorated officially in writing in advance. And a lot of those forms are available. You know, you've got something coming up at the Council on Aging next week. So it's not hard to find these documents. There are a lot of people who can tell you where you can find them. It's just a matter of not waiting until you're in crisis mode or it's too late to take care of them. So the incapacity piece is important. Yes, everybody thinks they need a will or some form of a trust, and perhaps that would be important too. But for any of these scenarios, my first question is always, do you have a power of attorney? Because that's going to pause everything.
And Nancy, the difference between an elder law attorney and an attorney, is there a difference?
Obviously, we're all attorneys, but at the same time, the elder law component is what I like to think of it as, I know what to do when the rubber hits the road. So you can probably find any attorney who can pull a will off of somewhere, but when you go to use it, you need to be comfortable with the idea that it's going to work in your specific situation. And so we're able to wrap in anticipated circumstances as to what's common with the agent and incorporate that into your document. So I guess that's the specialty area. You don't go to the general physician to have surgery on your heart, you go to the cardiologist. Any physician understands the heart, but if you want to deal specifically with your set of criteria, you go to a cardiologist for that. So I guess I would liken it to that.
Is there any, yes, Mary?
Yeah, one thing, and it's not always easy, that would help anybody here is if you can get a family together for a family meeting, the parent or parents and their children, and you know, anybody else that has a stake in the situation before things get really bad. You know, we can, advanced directives are important, but talking is even more important. And I'll just share very quickly, I had it all in my head what I wanted when I died, and then one Thanksgiving, big downer. I brought it up and I said this to my family and they nearly passed out. You know, they said, no, of course we have to have calling hours. Of course we have to have a funeral mass, you know, and all of this other stuff. And I was like, oh, and my daughter started crying and everything. You know, it's got to go two ways, you know. It's great to just say, this is what I want, and then leave. Sometimes that leaves the family hanging. The other reason, and with any kind of incapacitation, whether the person's going to be at home or whatever, the family has, I heard someone else say, they have to work as a team. So if you sit down with all the brothers and sisters and say, well, I'll check on mom this night, or maybe she needs someone overnight. Well, I'll do this night, that night. You know, to make a plan and work as a team. It doesn't always go that easy, but it's a very valuable tool if you can bring the whole family together to talk about the situation. And if they're capable, you know, like the parents has Alzheimer's or whatever, hopefully they've taken care of everything as Nancy had suggested.
What I'd like to do now is open up to some questions for you guys. Does anyone have any questions for our awesome panel here? It's okay if you don't.
I have a question. Nancy, with the HIPAA, you know, as far as getting it, is it to go through a lawyer or usually at the doctor's office? Because they don't usually always have you fill out that.
Yep.
So do you just kind of tell people, make sure you just ask for it from your primary care doctor?
So the HIPAA and the healthcare proxy can be situation specific or they can be general. So you might go into the hospital, have your appendix out, they do a healthcare proxy or a HIPAA for that situation. The concern is you run the risk that it could be 10 years before you go in again. They're not necessarily going to assume that's still your wishes. So you're better served in addition to perhaps whatever you do with your doctor, is having one you've executed outside of that environment that is presumed to be valid because you're toting it around with you. So they sort of go hand in hand. There's no reason not to sign the ones that they present to you, but you should have a reinforcement. What if you're on a road trip somewhere and you've never been to that facility or seen that doctor? Yes, in theory, somebody somewhere might go back and find your primary care physician and ask if it's in your file, but do you want to be waiting for that to happen? Relying on someone to think about that? No, you want to have better access to that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess, I'm a social worker, so I've done a million healthcare processes, but don't usually do the HIPAA form, and that I've noticed is kind of crucial.
Yes, and it's becoming more essential because the entities required to uphold that law are going to be financially sanctioned if they don't do it. So now that's why it's become such a, it used to be just phased in, and now they're starting to hammer the entities that don't honor that law. So you are finding much more of an adherence to that now than you used to have. So it is important because your healthcare proxy also is not effective unless a doctor deems you're incapacitated. Well, you could be sort of in that gray area and still want your kids to know what's going on. They have no right if they don't have a HIPAA to go with it.
And are those forms usually, do you go through a lawyer, or is it best to go through a lawyer? Or
Of course I'm going to say it.
I know, of course.
But in theory, again, if you never leave the town of Pepperell and you have 2 doctors and you will never go anywhere else, in theory you feel safe in that reassurance. And certainly as we age, your sphere of travel might be smaller, but there is always the fear if you're mobile, you could be somewhere or see a new professional and not have that on record.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
So my beautiful panel, have we touched on everything? Can you think of anything we haven't mentioned? I thought the scenarios went well. Is there anything you would like to add?
I'll ask a
Kathy?
question.
Ask a question, awesome.
I've been doing this forever, and when I first started, it was kind of traditional. Most scenarios were kind of the same. The little old lady at home that needs to make some changes or bring in some help. I'm seeing such change in the senior demographics. I'm going to put it out there, see what you guys see too. That leads to a lot of complications, like people are working longer. So a lot of times there's a working spouse when there's a couple that kind of adds some complications financially, legally. And stepchildren. When I first started, no one had stepchildren, and now I see it all the time. So the financial, the legal piece, the paperwork piece is so important to people now. It's even more so now because that element's been added. And domestic partnerships. I'm seeing that a lot too, which I had never seen before. So it just adds such a different layer, and I think it's just going to get more and more complicated for folks to stay on top of, changes in Medicare and all the things that we kind of can just talk to over the phone and give you advice on. But it's constantly changing. It's changing now more than ever, to me anyways. I'm probably the one doing it wrong, the oldest maybe. But those are kinks that I never expected to see ever again.
Tammy?
I'm really new to this, and I'm seeing young people coming through my doors. I do adult day health, and I'm getting 55, 56-year-old early onset Alzheimer's coming through my doors.
I think it's all what we do too with education. People are getting good diagnoses now. People used to just kind of struggle with not really knowing what they were doing.
With spouses as caregivers who are still
Working.
working full-time, and so there's a lot of support that needs to be given to them, a lot of education, and we have teamed up with lots of places to help educate those caregivers, because what do you do when you're 58 years old and your significant other has just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and you haven't even begun your retirement? They need significant education.
Well, no one ever thinks of that early onset.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
This is for Nancy. You mentioned about the married couple where only one has half, dictate what half the assets go to.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on
So
that?
for instance, the house is probably the most common example of that. Most
Okay.
husbands and wives own their house as what they call tenants by the entirety. Meaning, my husband dies, he owns the house. There's no probate, there's no legal, by virtue of the way we own it, it automatically passes. However, if I become incapacitated, my husband only owns half the house. He can't transfer it, change it, fix it. He can't sign my name, even though I sign his name all the time.
She didn't say that. I did too.
Just kidding. But the reality is legally, it becomes a problem because he can't act for me, even though everyone in the world might say, well, of course Nancy would have wanted that. A judge you actually have to hire what they call a guardian ad litem, a GAL, to investigate the situation, report to a judge to confirm that's what I would have wanted based on what they have as evidence of that. So it delays what for most people is an obvious thing. And it adds several $1,000s to what should have been a couple hundred.
And is that guardianship easy to get?
It's not necessarily hard to get once you've done 97 steps to get there, but it's an unnecessary waste of money. That's the hard part.
Any other questions?
Just one more.
Sure.
I got the attorney.
That's
here.
why, that's why we're
Go
here.
Is there a point in someone's age where they're just like, they're not mentally competent, that going to see an elderly care lawyer won't do any good?
So the interesting thing is each document has a different set of criteria for how competent you need to be to sign it. And for example, your level of competency to sign a healthcare proxy is much lower than the level of competency you need to sign a will. So I wouldn't say there's a blanket yes or no. And even some people who have been diagnosed with the beginning stages of Alzheimer's, that does not necessarily mean you're incompetent. It just means you have a diagnosis. So we might err on the side of caution depending on the family dynamics. You get a doctor's note that says they feel you're competent to sign these types of things. But there is no specific age. Certainly, yes, there are circumstances where I'm up against the wall, but you have to assess it on a case-by-case basis. And with a power of attorney, family can do some of the things that need to be done, even if the person is beyond that.
Any other questions? We'll probably close out the panel now, but I'd like you to just go down yourselves, so I don't look like I'm reading my paper. And Kathy Crowley, why don't you start and let us know what you do, and just head right down the road.
Okay, I'm Kathy Crowley. I work at Riverport Residences. It's assisted living, independent living, and memory care and breath.
Jim?
My name is Jim Giorgio, and my company is Senior Helpers, and we do in-home care for seniors. About 80% of our clients are actually aging in place in their home, with everything from 3 hours a week all the way to 24/7 and living. And the other 20% of our clients are in assisted living facilities, where we just provide a little bit of extra help to keep them independent.
I'm Mark Vassapoli. I live right here in Pepperell. Past 16 years, I'm a financial advisor for the last 30 years. I started when I was a kid. And my office is right here in Pepperell, right behind the Main Street Bank, the new Main Street Bank. Also want to let you know that next week, I left some of these, we're doing a seminar right here at the library about Social Security and retirement income solutions for people that, believe it or not, there's over 70 choices that you can make on your Social Security benefits. And a lot of people don't realize that. So everybody's unique. So what your brother did, what your friend did, may not be what you do. So that's what I do for a living as a financial advisor.
My name is Jackie Holliday. I work at the Bedford VA, Department of Veterans Affairs. I am the outreach coordinator, and my job is to go out into the community and talk to veterans and veterans organizations and basically anybody who will listen about VA benefits, and trying to encourage our veterans to enroll and utilize the benefits that they've earned.
My name is Tamara LeCompte. I work at Cooperative Elder Services in Groton. I'm the program director at that site, and we have 5 sites here in Massachusetts.
I'm Nancy Catalini Chu. I'm an estate planning and elder law attorney. My office is in Harvard. I live in Ashby. I serve everybody I can reach in between. And again, as said previously, we handle the legal and financial side of planning for that capacity.
I'm Shannon Pinkham. I'm the business development manager for the Neshoba Nursing Service and Hospice. And just like the name says, we do hospice, we do home care, skilled nursing services, nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, we have a social worker, and we also offer hospice and palliative bridge care. And we take care of clients, Medicare, Medicaid, and many private insurances as well. And anything from, rehab after a knee to more severe injuries, more severe illnesses, and education in the home. Trying to keep people in their homes as long as we can.
I'm Mary Ann Mortensen, and as Susan pointed out earlier, I've worked with elders in various capacities for 30 years, and I was once a COA senior center director, as she is, but now I'm retired, and I go in once a week and try to help Paula, Michelle. I don't know where that crept in. Maybe I'm getting
We know where to go.
You'll be our
I know
Marianne's
I know who's
We are
going to
very
take care
lucky.
of me.
Very
Yeah.
lucky.
But I help Michelle out, try to cover the phones in the office if she has home visits or paperwork to do.
And finds me grants.
And
Writes
and
grants for me.
grants for her, and a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But it keeps me up on what's going on, and makes me feel useful.
And I'm Susan McCarthy, I'm the director at the Pepperell Senior Center. Our Shine representative couldn't come tonight. She is there once a month on a Tuesday, second Tuesday of the month. And she works with Medicare and helps people find the right plan for them. She spends a lot of time with people, she's fabulous. So if you need any help or assistance at all, it's the second Tuesday of every month that she comes in. She's phenomenal. I want to thank my panel tonight for doing such an awesome job running through those scenarios. We're going to hang out, we're going to have the cameras shut off so that if you have any private questions, you can ask the panel. Please help yourself to food, and we appreciate you all coming tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.